So last year, Chaplain Katie Carson, who has attended a few services at Tri-County Unitarian Universalist, this congregation's sibling up in Summerfield, asked me to offer this talk. So this is a slightly pared down version of it. As a former chaplain, I deeply appreciate taking the time to recognize the work that y'all do in caring for those who enter the hospital in what might be some of the most challenging times of their lives. I am a clinically trained chaplain. I completed 9 units of clinical pastoral education, CPE, in a single unit, a residency, and a fellowship, and considered entering educator training. I worked for about 2 years in another hospital setting after my CPE training was done. I now serve as the minister of 2 congregations. Unitarian Universalism is a small faith, but what we have to offer the world, especially for those doing chaplaincy work, I believe is rich. I remember attending our national gathering of UU's General Assembly one year and noticing the Navy had a booth set up. They had learned about Unitarian Universalism, and because of how our faith works, we are basically ideal people to become chaplains, and they were there to try to recruit. I'm not sure how successful they've been, as unfortunately, also because of how our faith works, we are also not people who are good with being told what to do. But thank you for doing this work. Whatever called you to it, I hope you are finding fulfillment. It can be challenging on a soul level, so do take good care of yourselves. I think I was asked to speak about serving people who identify as being not from non-Christian or Jewish faiths. I'm not going to do that exactly, as in my opinion, that's not what chaplaincy is about. Or maybe I will be talking about that, but not in the way that I at least was thinking. That said, if you are interested in learning more about different faiths, I highly recommend Stephen Prothro's God is Not One, the 8 rival religions that run the world. He covers Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Confucianism, Yoruba religion, Taoism, and atheism. It's a great read, and I highly recommend it, which you know because I've referred to it several times. I implied before that the way that my faith works is unusual. That's because it's not based on shared beliefs. Almost every answer to a question about what UUs believe about something begins with, it depends. Christians have at least a shared belief in Jesus as Christ, as Savior, and within given denominations and congregations, shared creeds or statements of belief. Jews go through periods of study to become official members of their communities based on shared beliefs of some kind, shared history, and including a commitment to questioning. Unitarian Universalists, however, are more invested in sharing practices than sharing belief. If you enter a UU congregation sometime, it is likely you will see or hear the words, "We need not think alike to love alike," somewhere. For us, faith isn't about agreeing to particular dogma. Instead, the cornerstone of our faith is covenant. A covenant is an agreement, a commitment, and an aspiration to being together, to journey together as we explore our spiritualities, to support, celebrate, and challenge one another as we go, but ultimately committing to being in relationship together. We know we're going to mess up. That's what it is to be human. But unlike a contract, a covenant asks us to find a way back to each other, to restore right relationship between us, and to begin anew. This is fundamental to our faith because our congregations are pluralistic. Any congregation is going to have people from a variety of religious backgrounds, and many UUs have what I call hyphenated identities. They are Christian UUs, pagan UUs, and so on. And our congregations are likely to have people who now have and or still identify as Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, pagan, atheist, humanist, and many also include Muslim and Hindus and others. So instead of having a shared belief in a particular theological statement or dogma, the way many Christian denominations do, we commit to the being together and journeying together. You may hear us talk about the importance of deeds, not creeds. Our polity is congregationalist, in that each congregation makes their own decisions democratically about who leads, who ministers, how the budget gets managed, and so on. 2 years ago now, at our annual national gathering of General Assembly, the delegates from each congregation and religious professionals voted to replace what were known as the 7 principles with our shared values: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity, all connected to each other as well as their center, a liberating love. While that is some information about us, when I think about the practice of what that means, I think of one of my favorite children's stories that I learned as an adult in church, God in Between, by Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso. Although I am a non-theist, I love the way that this captures the heart of what I believe faith is and the potential power of chaplaincy. The story is set in a town that has many struggles, and the people decide to send 2 of their own into the world to find God to help them. The man and the woman go separate ways to cover more ground. They search everywhere, in the desert and the mountains, the sea and the caves, but God is nowhere to be found. They come back together, sunburned and seasick, and start talking, telling one another about their lives. In the morning, they agree to go home. The people in the town ask about God, and the 2 say they did not find God in their searching. The people feel vindicated. They knew God didn't exist. The 2 clarified that that's not what they had said. They said they didn't find God in their searching out in the world. What they found instead was that God was between them. This is the essence of chaplaincy, to help another find their way to what matters most, to make sense of their experiences and their lives. Of course, chaplaincy is a little different, as there is a power differential, and our goal as chaplains is to help someone find their way, not for us to work on finding ours when we're offering care. But chaplains have 2 vital roles in this work: to be companions and to be mirrors. We offer intentional and active listening, compassionate care, reflection of what we've heard, and insight into patterns, gaps, and other pieces of a person's story. As a chaplain, I learned to define people as meaning-seeking, meaning-making, storytelling creatures. Sometimes we find ourselves telling stories that have either ceased to have meaning for us, at least in a helpful way, or we have experiences that we are striving earnestly to have a story for. Maybe something that we don't understand or is out of the frame of reference, and it is causing us distress. In Fire, by poet and educator Judy Brown, she writes, "What makes a fire burn is space between the logs, a breathing space. Too much of a good thing, too many logs packed in too tight, can douse the flames almost as surely as a pail of water would. So building fires requires attention to the spaces between, as much as to the wood. When we are able to build open spaces in the same way we have learned to pile on the logs, then we can come to see how it is fuel and the absence of the fuel together that make fire possible. We only need lay a log lightly from time to time. A fire grows simply because the space is there, with openings in which the flame that knows just how it wants to burn can find its way. As chaplains, we help make a little space so the care seeker can view the story they have with a little distance. The work of the chaplain is to understand, sometimes to reframe a story or to tell it using a different lens, to offer it back to the care seeker and to give them a little bit of space to move things around, to do the most vital work we as humans can do, find meaning in our lives and experiences. We make the space for sacred presence to enter and do its work. This doesn't mean our role is to be a ray of sunshine, nor are we meant to fix or save people. We are meant to help them see themselves and their situations more clearly so that they can find their way, even when it's not the one that we would choose for them. Sometimes this means we have to compassionately challenge the care seeker. A near-death experience is very likely not the only thing that will keep someone with a substance use disorder from using again, for example. Of course, we don't say this in the immediate response of their trauma, but later when they have had a chance to process it and have begun to shape a narrative about believing that that will keep them safe. We remind them that resources and support are available too, and how to access them. So while it can be helpful to have some idea of people's religious identities' bullet points, that's not our job. It's good to know that Muslims fast during Ramadan and Jews fast during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but that cannot tell us about that person's relationship with their God if they believe in one or more. We need this care seeker to tell us their stories. They tell us what their relationship with their deity or deities of choice are, along with how that informs and shapes that person's practices, thinking, and living. Chaplains bring all sorts of tools with us to these encounters: assessment tools, interventions, referrals, spiritual practices, feeling wheels, but empathetic care, listening, and curiosity are the meat and potatoes of chaplaincy. Knowing the scriptures can be helpful for some, but not all. And it's also important to remember again that the understanding that we have of the scriptures may not be the same as another person's understanding. Different interpretations and resonances will happen even within the same denomination and the same congregation, which is why the accompanying of the care seeker is so important. Ask wondering questions, clarifying questions, questions that can help you understand the other's view. All the knowledge in the world can't help us know this better than the care seeker themselves, and won't necessarily give us what we need to help them grow or change or consider things differently. I am a firm believer that, for the most part, we have the potential to be the sources of our own healing, and we have what we need to achieve that healing. Often what we need is affirmation or permission from another person or their clear witness in relationship. Without others, none of us can see ourselves as clearly as we think we can. We're all a little biased in our perspectives. We live our entire lives in our own heads, and our brains work hard to make our experiences and living as bearable as possible. So the way we can truly know ourselves well is to be in relationship with others, those with whom we can trust in their assessments and reflections. I remember going to one particular therapist and having her help me break down situations so I could see when I was the source of my own problems or where I was responsible for things. I learned to change my behaviors then to prevent continuing to harm myself and my relationships. In my residency and fellowship, I was at a VA and did a lot of work in palliative care and hospice. I met many vets there in the process of dying who never had been told that it was okay to find God in the world. Sometimes they would say they didn't find God in the church or in the scriptures, and not everyone does. They had never been told that it was perfectly acceptable that they found God in hiking or fishing or camping. It was such a relief for them that they often passed away quickly afterward. A final story. Rachel Naomi Rahman, MD, who recently joined the Ancestors, writes in My Grandfather's Blessings about some of the many lessons she learned from her grandfather, who was a Kabbalah scholar. Once, when she was 4, he brought her a cup of dirt and told her that if she watered it every day, something might happen. Rachel lived with her parents on a 6th-floor apartment in New York City. She was skeptical of this cup of dirt, which she would not have been allowed to bring to the apartment herself. But she agrees. The first week or so, she waters it with enthusiasm, eager to see what will happen. The next week, she becomes a bit begrudging about the task, sometimes only remembering to do it after she's been put to bed. But over the course of several weeks, she does not miss one single day. And in the morning, something does happen. 2 little green leaves start to peek through the dirt. Remen is delighted and awed. "And all it needs is water, Grandpa?" she asks. "No," he replies. "Life is hidden everywhere in the most ordinary and unlikely places," he says. "All it needs is your faithfulness." May you continue to be faithful in your own lives, in your own ways, and may the ministry you share with care seekers in the hospital and the faithfulness you cultivate extend into the care and witness you provide. If you would please rise and lift your voice in song with me for our closing hymn, Let It Be a Dance.